Hi, I'm Kelly and welcome to Kapowski Reads, and this is my Reading Scottish wrap-up for February, and I am absolutely delighted in being able to say that I have finally finished reading Lanark by Alasdair Gray. This was a big old book and I was buddy reading it over 2 months. So I did mention this last month because I'd read the first half, and this month I read the second half, and I still have zero idea what this book was even about. I've read over 600 pages and I don't know. Well, I kind of do. It is half sort of dystopian alternate reality and half the real world. And I think that the real world parts are based on the author's life because the main character goes to art school and the author went to art school. So I'm thinking there's some similarities there. The dystopian chapters though are... The cat's lying next to me on the bed and he is purring, so that's probably getting picked up by the camera. He's a tired little man. The dystopian chapters are odd. They are very strange. They all take place, well, they don't. They take place initially in a reality where sort of industry is pretty much dead. There are no jobs. Everyone is quite awful. There's no daylight as well. And then from that world, off Lanark pops to another world, which is like a hospital. Then he escapes, goes back to the original weird world, and it's just a strange book. I feel like it is like a fever dream where you just don't know you don't know what's going on. It was like when you're in hospital and you're getting put under for anesthetic and you have these really weird trippy dreams. That is what this book is. So strange. I'm so happy I read it because now I can at least say I have read a huge part of Scottish fiction, but I don't know what was going on. No clue. And I had a group chat. I was in a group chat with like 30 people. None of us knew what was happening. And I think that this is one of those books that you just have to buckle yourself in for a wild ride with no expectations. And it's weird. It's very bizarre. It's very mind-bending. The characters are almost all of them absolutely awful, horrible people. But still, I found myself wanting to continue reading it. I wanted to keep going. And part of that was I wanted to keep going because I thought there was going to be maybe a chapter at the end that was like, here's some symbolism that you didn't get, or something like that, but that didn't happen. But the other reason I wanted to keep reading was just that I wanted to keep reading. I wanted to find out where the book was heading, and I could not have guessed where the book was going because how could you? It was so strange, so bizarre, but I'm so happy I read it. I think I liked it, but I don't know because I don't even know what I just read. So let's move on to a book that I did understand because this is the bookish channel, so I need to be able to actually say things about the books. Next up was a romance because it's February and I feel like it would be remiss of me not to read at least one romance. And romance isn't my usual go-to genre, so I picked a romance that had a little bit of a revenge angle because I love a revenge story. So I went with The Wrong Side of Kai by Estelle Maskame. And this author is local to Aberdeen. She is from Aberdeenshire, Peterhead, which is, I think, maybe 30 miles away. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly confident with my terrible sense of distance that Peterhead is only about 30 miles away. So this was really exciting for me to pick up a book by an author who lives kind of nearby. This book is all about Vanessa and Kai. I think we could have guessed it was about Kai based on the title, but Vanessa finds herself at a house party with a guy that she is seeing, and he videos them during a very intimate moment. And then, because he's a stand-up guy, he leaks that video when Vanessa decides that she doesn't want to date him, because that's a healthy reaction to rejection. So Vanessa is in high school and she is just like a social pariah, because even though two of them were in that video, she's the only one getting horrible comments and judgmental looks. So she punches Harrison, the guy who leaked the video, and I cheered a little at that point. Not that violence is okay. However, he had it coming. Then she's sent off to the head teacher's office where she meets a new student called Kai. Kai had transferred from a sort of rival school, and he, it turns out, is A, hunky, and B, has some beef with Harrison, and decides, you know what, why don't we team up and have this big revenge plot? And at this point, I was so delighted because it was giving me John Tucker Must Die vibes. That film is excellent, the casting is exquisite, the soundtrack is amazing, and the plot is fantastic. I love that film. I might watch it later. But I love a high school revenge story. I was not expecting this book to be set in the US. I assumed that a Scottish author writing about a high school sort of drama story would set the book in Scotland. I was expecting this book to take place in Peterhead, and it took me an embarrassingly long amount of time to realise that it was not. At first I was very confused about why the house party was not referred to as an empty, and why everybody seemed to have pickup trucks, and why the head teacher was called a principal. There were signs. There were so many signs and I did not pick them up. And I think I only realised when they actually mentioned that they lived in like Iowa, Idaho, there was definitely an I. Ohio? A place in the US with an I in the name. That's where they lived. I really enjoyed this book from a I love the drama point of view. The book is not realistic at all. In the real world, you would go to the police, get Harrison charged for leaking that video. Her dad, Vanessa's dad, used to be on the police force. You know what to do in that situation. But she didn't. She went on a revenge plot, and I got an entertaining story of tormenting somebody who totally deserved it. And it's okay to say that because the book is fiction. It's not real life. But in fiction, I absolutely was like, yes, do the thing. And the revenge, did they take it too far? Maybe. I have very strong feelings that if you were going to do revenge in like a book that's set in the real world, the second that the characters start breaking the law, I feel you've gone too far. And their revenge just escalated so quickly. I thought that somebody was going to end up truly injured and not in a good place. I think that the revenge was very over the top, but from an entertainment point of view, I enjoyed it. The characters felt very, very one note. I would have loved to have known a little bit more about Kai, about China, who was the best friend in this story, but I didn't get any of that. I just got sort of very surface level character development, which the characters were nice enough that I could kind of root for them, but I didn't feel like I knew them. And Harrison, again, he was just sort of a cartoon villain, and I would have liked a little bit more. But overall, I really enjoyed this book. It was hilarious. I don't know if it was meant to be hilarious, but I found it funny, and I really enjoyed the sort of revenge tale, the romance that you could see coming a mile away. I knew it was coming, and I was happy because, I mean, you couldn't get worse than Harrison, so might as well go with the guy who seems like a decent person. That made sense. But yeah, this was fun, teenage angsty drama. If this book was a film, it would be a teen film where all of the main characters were played by actors in their 30s, and it would have an amazing 80s soundtrack. If it was a film, I would love it. The next romance I read, because I read another, was The No Attachment Agreement by Nicki Bell. This was a novella, and it was one of those let's pretend we're dating stories, which I am hit or miss with. I either love them or I'm like, why don't you just date? You like each other. And in this story, we have Matt and we have Ashley. So Matt's sister is Ashley's best friend and she's getting married. And Matt doesn't have a date to the wedding, but his ex-girlfriend is going. I mean, I don't know. I think you could probably ask your sister to not invite your ex-girlfriend to your wedding if your sister isn't friends with her, but let's go with it. And Ashley is kind of fresh out of a breakup, but we're not sad about it because her breakup is with a really creepy kind of stalkery guy. So she and Matt decide one day that they are going to fake date. It's going to work for both of them because it's going to get Ashley's ex-boyfriend just realizing she's moved on, because turns out words aren't enough for him to move on. He needs to see her with somebody else and that'll take care of it. And Matt doesn't want to appear single at his sister's wedding. I don't know why he's not taking a friend, but here we are. And I love these two together. I love their dynamic. They were such opposite characters. Matt was very sort of sensible, super smart, very business minded, and quite enjoyed his alone time, wanted a quiet life. And Ashley was a little bit of a party girl and super confident and outgoing. So their sort of personalities really just complemented each other and they sort of completed each other. It was absolutely lovely to read and it was heartwarming, and I was just rooting for them from the beginning because we all know what we want from a fake dating story. We do, we know it. We want that fake to disappear and for nice times to happen. And I really enjoyed this book. It was a super quick read and I had a really great time with it. It was only 50 pages, so I don't have a lot to say because I think if I was to say any more, I would give huge spoilers for a really short and sweet story. So I'm just going to say I enjoyed it. It was lovely. And my last Scottish read of February was not romance. I moved away from romance and I went to Our Lady of Mysterious Ailments by T.L. Huchu. This is book 2 in the Edinburgh Nights series, which I started reading a couple of months ago, I think. I can't remember. I think it was last year. And I'm really enjoying it so far. It takes place in an alternate version of Edinburgh. And our protagonist, Ropa, has a gift. She can speak to ghosts. She can speak to ghosts. And that's how she makes her living, by passing messages from beyond. And Ropa finds herself helping on a medical case where there's a young boy who is in a really bad way. And the spirit world has been involved, so that is why she's involved. And she finds herself having to go to one of the magical schools, the only magical school in Edinburgh that does not allow women. So you can tell how well that was going to go. And basically investigate the goings on. And in addition to the work at the hospital, she is also undertaking an apprenticeship for a magical organisation, because in this world all of the magic is regulated. This was book 2 in a series, but I do strongly feel like you could read this book without having read the first book. And I did prefer this book to the first book as well. I feel like a lot of the world building was just enhanced in this book. I really got a sort of vision of the world, Edinburgh, this version of Edinburgh. Because in the last book, I just had an assumption based on what I'd read that it took place in a somewhat medieval version of Edinburgh that just happened to have iPhones. But in this book, it was made very clear that it is the modern world. It's just that some elements of this world are a little different, and the gap between the haves and the have-nots is much wider. So I really got a sort of better understanding of this world and of the stakes, the risks. I really loved Ropa. We got more of Ropa and her family. I love her granny. I absolutely love her. She is a very, very minor character in this story, but I feel like we got a little bit more of her history, and I hope that we're going to get more in book 3, because her granny is where she got her sort of skills from, and her granny uses Zimbabwean magic as well, and oh, I love her granny. There was a bank in this book too, which does not necessarily sound exciting, but it was a magical bank with a magical archive. And I mean, throw magical in front of any building and I am excited, I'm invested. So I really liked getting to know a little bit more about the sort of the magic organizations in this book. The boring admin-y places were mentioned, and I really got a good grip of what was going on. The first book in the series was called The Library of the Dead, so I suppose I am living in hope that we're going to get to see the Library of the Dead. It's not happened in this book, but I really want it to happen in the third book, so that would be cool. I'm very much invested in this series now. The next book is out, I want to say September, but I think I'm just guessing everything I want to read is out in September, because a book arrived for me this week that I assumed was out in September, because I just make up release dates and turns out they're very rarely correct. I had a great selection of Scottish reads this month. I'm really happy with what I've gotten through. I had a nice variety, so let's see what next month brings. I hope it is more wonderful reads, and hopefully I understand them all, because that would be good too. If you've read any Scottish fiction lately, I would love to know. Please let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching. Bye!